Welcome back to another episode of the Green Hölle Greenhorn here on Box Gaming. My name is Justin, and today we will be driving in the Nissan GTR R34, which is, of course, at least in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of other people will share this opinion, that it is the most influential, the most iconic of all the Nissan Skylines. It is a car that has been created for a long period of time. It's been around since like the 60s or the 70s at least. It's been around for a very long time. In the 90s, really started to come into its own, dominating in V8 supercar, I believe, in Australia. Was an extremely dominant car. Particularly, I really like the R32 series Nissan Skyline, particularly the rear-wheel drive version of that car. But this R34 Skyline, I believe, is all-wheel drive. It certainly handles like it's all-wheel drive. And yeah, it's got a twin-turbo 2.6 liter inline six. The RB26DETT, the TT standing for twin turbo. So it should have plenty of power. I know I just did this, just the last episode. If you missed the last episode of Green Hölle Greenhorn, episode number 46, I would highly recommend that you check that out because that was a really good race. I feel like I drove very well. One of the best two-lap combinations that I've ever done in a car, and I would highly encourage you to go check it out. But one of the things that we learned in that race is that actually the R34 doesn't really stack up to all these other cars that you would think it would be similar to. It really was not much faster than the Supra, possibly even slower than the Supra. The 370Z, I believe, was faster, but I mean, that's a 3.7 liter six-cylinder engine, I believe naturally aspirated on the Nismo edition even, and produces lots of torque, lots of power with it being such a large engine in that 370Z. So I was not surprised that the 370Z was faster than it. I believe the 370Z also a lighter weight car in comparison to the R34, but the RX-7 and the Supra both seemed to be quite a bit faster than the R34, which was very, very surprising to me. So that's why I've gone ahead and I've chosen it for the next car that I'm going to drive here on the Green Hölle Greenhorn. So we're going to take it out in a race. We're going to go up against the RX-7, the stock version, the Lotus Exige 240R, the stock version of that as well. There's like a stage 1 and stage 3 version of that car, the 240R. This is just the stock version. And then we've got a Supra, the 370Z, and a BMW M3 E92 Step 1, so a modified BMW M3 E92. Also joining the field. So we've got cars from 4 different countries and 3 different continents, and there's only 6 cars in the race, so I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. Let's go ahead and head to the grid. All right, so here we are on the grid in our Skyline R34, and I just want to say right off the bat, I did not make any sort of adjustments to the settings on this car, running totally stock as I normally do, and just listen to that beautiful engine as it revs and the lights go out, and we get a fantastic launch. Much better than the M3, and also quite a bit better than the 370Z. We've straight up passed the M3 before turn 1. Then we went to the inside of the 370Z. We got a way better exit than the Supra out of the corner as well. We've shot up into 3rd position already. Only the RX-7 and 240R, the Lotus, are ahead of us at this stage. The RX-7 started on pole position with the 240R alongside it. So these were the 2 cars that I put on pole position, and these are probably the 2 cars that are going to handle the best. I believe these are the 2 lightest weight vehicles in the series, but I'm hoping that my twin-turbo inline 6 will be enough to surpass these guys in a straight line, or at least that was sort of my logic behind it. Going through that chicane, down the hill we go, and you can see quite a large gap actually already beginning to form, and also the Lotus Exige already having a look at the RX-7, so it looks like the Lotus with very, very good acceleration, even compared to that RX-7, and even compared to myself in this R34, dropping down into 4th gear for the high-speed double right-hander there, with a little bit of a lift there as well. This car is quite understeery. As I mentioned, it is all-wheel drive, so you're much more likely to get understeer rather than oversteer in this car. For those that are familiar with driving an all-wheel drive car or racing an all-wheel drive car, it handles like an all-wheel drive car. Pretty much all of the philosophies that you would put into place for an all-wheel drive car, those apply very well with the R34. Dropping it down actually to second gear, I did a couple of races before this one where I made some mistakes because I didn't do any practice laps or anything like that. I just jump straight into the races usually when I do these. I did a couple of practice races. I say practice races. I did a couple of races where I crashed, and you can actually see those, by the way. I don't know if anybody's picked up on that yet, but you can actually see where I've crashed on previous races because you'll see like dark, thick tire skid marks heading into a barrier or something like that. And I think this was one of those where there's at least a couple of places on the circuit where you can actually spot the part where I crashed while trying to record this previously. Look at the RX-7 though. It is really pulled away from the Lotus Exige now. The back end gets a little bit light when you're not on the throttle or on the brakes, really. When you're on the brakes, it feels pretty solid, pretty rock solid, I'm not going to lie. It's a good feeling car under braking and on the throttle as well, but it does get a little bit light feeling when you're not using the throttle or the brakes. So that can be a little difficult. However, if the car does start to slide, if you do start to get oversteer in the R34, really just a bit of an application of the throttle, and that'll fix it right up for you, and then you'll start getting understeer instead. But yeah, a little bit of throttle goes a long way in the R34 when it comes to mid-corner traction. Dropping it down to second gear for the quick left and right, and I think we've actually gained a little bit of time. The Exige definitely gaining time. So the Exige definitely seems to have the advantage over the RX-7 up ahead. Excuse me. When it comes to the corners and the straights, but not at all times. It's very, very strange. They seem like a very, very well-matched couple of cars. Because the RX-7 will pull out a gap, and then the Exige closes it in, and then the RX-7 pulls out a gap, and the Exige closes it in. So coming down the hill, going to keep it in third gear for this one. You could maybe drop it down to second. No, I think third is definitely the right choice there. Could have gotten on the throttle a little bit earlier, and quite a large gap actually beginning to form behind us. Currently in third position. The car behind us is the 370Z, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm fairly certain the 370Z is the car behind. And it is losing out right now to everybody else behind. I mean, he's got a train going. Well, there's only two cars behind him. It's the M3 and the Supra, but they can't seem to find a way by him. I think someone might actually be going side by side with the 370Z in the background there, kind of focusing on that battle, considering there's not a lot happening between myself and the cars up ahead. But clearly, this is not going to be an easy race for me whatsoever. I've been in clean air since like turn number 2. And we're already on like turn 40, and I really haven't made any sort of headway whatsoever. Down to second gear once again for this corner, taking a very late apex. Not a traditional line that I take. I don't normally take that kind of line through that hairpin corner, but I don't know, it just felt right in the Skyline. The Exige completely missing the carousel, goes up on the lip of it, and then drops back down into the carousel for some reason. A bit of oversteer as we get on the throttle coming out of the exit of the carousel, and the Exige has closed up on the RX-7 despite that moment where he went outside of the carousel and up onto that rim. Behind, it does look like we are actually pulling out a gap. The 370Z doing a great job of holding up the cars behind. Downshift into third for this left then right. Getting oversteer at the entrance of both of those corners, and then just a dab of the brakes, keeping it in third gear. Now, this car is actually a 6-speed. You are not going to see me use all 6 gears, not even once. You will not see me shift out of 5th gear, even on the long straight. And then look how I just attacked that downhill right-hander. It feels so good in the Skyline. That corner particularly feels really, really good when you nail it, that downhill right-hander. The Exige getting very, very close to the RX-7, but we ourselves are getting quite close to the Exige, actually. It's been a good sector, I guess you could say. It feels like there's probably about 20 sectors of the Nordschleife, but it's been a good sector for us, and we've actually closed that gap a little bit. Up the hill now, this right-hander got on the throttle a little bit too early. The car started going out a little bit too wide, so I lifted off, and that takes care of the understeer, and it kind of gave it some traction to get back towards the inside of the corner. And up into 4th now. Will we get into 5th before the jump? It does not look like we will. Nope, down the jump and down into 3rd gear as well. Can't carry very much speed through that corner in the Skyline. It really doesn't like that stuff. Oh gosh, I'm running a little bit wide and off the circuit. We were also bouncing off the limiter there in third gear as well as we were coming over the hill. And look at this, we are really starting to close up now on the Exige and the RX-7. This is where we're going to find out whether or not we have the straight line speed to try and overtake these guys. Even if we don't have the acceleration, we might have the top speed, is the logic that I was thinking. We haven't really had the opportunity yet in this lap. Sure, there's plenty of full throttle parts to the lap, but nothing quite like this final straight that you get at the end of the lap, where you can just really open the car up and just try to hit top speed. And yeah, very long gears. I mean, you can see we're just now shifting into fourth gear at 95 miles an hour, and it's a 6-speed. So if you have a long enough road, yeah, I think you could easily break 200 miles an hour on this car, but I just don't know if it has the power to do that on the Nordschleife here. So here we are in the slipstream now of the Exige, up into fifth gear now, approaching 130 miles an hour. You can see the acceleration really starts to dwindle down once you start getting up into fifth gear, 140 miles an hour. It does seem the Exige is starting to hit its top speed. Can't really go too much faster, but look at the distance that the RX-7 has already pulled out. So the Exige with good acceleration, but the RX-7 with much better top speed. That really seems to be the difference between those two cars, and that explains why the RX-7 was pulling out gaps and then the Exige closing it in. Breaking 150 miles an hour as we come down the hill underneath that bridge, and then unfortunately we got to start getting on the brakes to get this very heavy car slowed down. Down into third gear now, and then we're going to drop it down into second gear, really attacking that corner. I thought I was going to be vulnerable to the Exige behind, but really no major issues there. I was able to get on the brakes nice and late. However, the Exige is coming at us now out of the final corner as we start lap number 2. I'm going to have to defend the inside line heading into turn number 1. I've gone a little bit wide. The Exige is going to attack. We've got some oversteer as well. We're flooring it out of the corner, full throttle now, side by side with the Exige. We're going to get the inside line for this next corner, and we should be able to defend the position, and we do. Just about nailing that corner. Could have carried a little bit more speed, but not too much more. That was pretty much on the limit. Oh, getting a bit of instability under braking down into third gear for this entire section. Now, this car it's tough to describe. There are aspects of this car make it very easy to drive. Very, very easy to drive. Not as easy as the Nissan GTR, though. The R35, as it's called, the new Skyline, which I've already driven in this series. I drove it in the past, which it's easily one of my favorite road cars to take on the circuit, the R35. This R34 is not that good. It's not as good as the R35, no question about it. Ooh, getting a little bit too much curb on the inside there. That's going to push us out a little bit wide, which means I didn't quite carry as much speed as I would have liked to. Meanwhile, the RX-7 up ahead is pulling out a significant gap, and the Exige behind us is all over the back of us. That battling that we did through turns 1 and 2 and I believe 3. I don't know if that slight right after turn 1 counts as a turn or not, but that has definitely hurt us. The RX-7 has only been able to extend the gap even further. Again, down into second gear, really hugging that inside curb. I don't think I've ever hugged the inside curb quite like that. But you can really step on the throttle at the exit of corners in this R34. Because of the all-wheel drive nature of the car, I started to learn towards the end of my time driving the car that you really want a little bit of oversteer at corner entry, and then you could just floor it. Because the car is so prone to understeering, that having a little bit of oversteer at the entrance of a corner is actually good. It helps you rotate that nose and get it pointed towards the exit of the corner, get you pointed in the right direction. And then once it's pointing the way that you want it, just step on the throttle, and it'll take care of the rest. I mean, it just straightens itself right out. You don't have to do all that much counter steering. You can see it gets a little bit, the back end feeling like it almost wants to step out there. Breaking down into third gear now. And again, see a little bit of oversteer, but it just kind of helps us get through that corner a little bit quicker. So a little bit of oversteer on corner entry is, I believe, the fastest way to maximize this R34, at least here on the Nordschleife. Of course, this track very different from the typical racing circuit that you're going to find. So what is true might not necessarily translate over to other circuits. But here, that's where you really see the understeer in this car. And especially, I was trying to find out where my big weakness was with this car, because it feels like it handles well. You know, it feels like I'm taking great amounts of speed through the corners. It feels like I'm able to step on the throttle nice and early. It feels like it's got good acceleration. It's got good top speed. Well, It's got good acceleration until you hit 5th gear. It's got good top speed. It's great on the brakes. I mean, it's incredibly stable. A bit of smoke actually coming up from that RX-7 into this uphill right-hander. I'm not sure if he had any issues, but a moment of oversteer at the exit of that corner, which is very uncommon for this car. But we have managed to pull out quite a gap to the Exige 240R behind us, so we are at least helping ourselves in that regard. The RX-7, the distance to the RX-7 does seem to have stabilized a bit late on the brakes there, so you can see I was a bit off position. I wasn't really on the racing line coming into that corner, and that was because I got onto the brakes a little bit late, caught me off guard, and I just kind of had to readjust. The Exige, meanwhile, taking advantage of that poor corner that I had, and again, the Exige seems to have very good acceleration, just not very good top speed, so he has actually closed onto the back of us quite a bit here. And in the background, actually, if you look behind the Exige, that is the BMW M3 E92. It has finally gotten itself by the Supra and the 370Z. It has been released into its natural habitat of the Nordschleife, and that M3 is flying right now. He is caught right up to the back of this battle for second position. Meanwhile, the RX-7 during this flat-out section has actually managed to pull out the gap even further. You can see that RX-7 is quite a ways up the road, heading into this hairpin for the second and final time in this race. Again, we're going to use second gear, running a little bit wide, and then just really stepping on the throttle. Again, a very, very late apex, but it just felt natural to do that in this car. I don't know what it was about the car's nature, but it is a heavy car. Like I said, it does handle well, but at the same time, it doesn't feel nimble. Which makes sense because it is a larger car, especially in comparison to something like the AE86, which I just drove in the previous video. This car is pretty much the polar opposite of that when it comes to how it handles and how lightweight it is and all that kind of stuff. And the Exige actually having a look at our inside. Oh, a big oversteer moment through the left-hander, another oversteer moment through the right-hander. We do hang on to it, but the Exige is all over the back of us, turning in nice and early and getting on the throttle nice and early for this right-hander. And then this right-hander coming up here, the AI is terrible at, so I just chuck it in fourth gear. Meanwhile, the Exige like brakes and downshifts for some reason. Bit of oversteer, but again, stepping on the throttle, attacking that downhill right-hander with full throttle in third gear, briefly up into fourth before dropping it back down into third. Another slight oversteer moment at the corner entry for that uphill right-hander, but again, I really think that actually just helps me more than anything else. Another brief oversteer moment in the middle of that corner, actually, but again, just really helping getting the car rotated and then going full throttle shortly in third gear and then up this hill. One of the reasons I would say this car is actually very good for beginners is because of the stability it has. It's very stable. It's very stable under braking, very stable under acceleration. But also, it's just it's very difficult to mess up in this car. I mean, as long as you can deal with the heavy nature of the car, then you will be absolutely fine. Once you get used to how the car handles, then it's very easy. But yeah, you definitely want to turn a couple of laps before you feel fully comfortable. That RX-7 is getting much bigger in our window here, getting quite large, in fact. So it looks like we are closing up on him during this flat-out section as we're approaching the end of this race now. And here we go into this corner. Fourth gear, hugging the inside, staying to the right-hand side in order to open up this corner. Dropping it down into third gear, and again, just getting a little bit of a slide on, but I really don't think that's hurting us too much as we head into the final carousel for the final time. And we carry quite a bit more speed than the RX-7 through there in third gear, accelerating now towards the uphill right-hander before coming onto the very long straight, dropping it down into third gear. And then, ooh, a bit of a wobble there. That kind of set us up a little bit. And then shifting into fourth, and then a big lift. But it does look like the RX-7 has had a much slower exit coming onto the straight. So we are going to possibly get a run on him here as we go into fifth gear now. And there goes the RX-7. Even with the slipstream and the twin-turbo inline 2.6-liter engine, we are just not enough for this RX-7. And unfortunately, there's really only 3 corners remaining in this race, so it does not look like we are going to be able to challenge for the win. Thankfully, though, you can see in the background, maybe if you're watching this on a big enough screen, in the background there, the M3 E92 is currently overtaking the Exige, and is rapidly approaching us as we have kind of gotten stuck at around 150 miles an hour, 153 as we come down the hill. And look at the size of that M3 in the mirrors. It is very, very close. We're very, very late on the brakes. Again, dropping it down into second gear for this right-hander. Going to stay in second gear for this left-hander now. We might briefly hit third before the final corner. No, we do not. We just keep it in second gear and just full throttle out of that corner, and we are going to finish behind the RX-7 in what was a very, very close race, an incredible close race. 1.5 seconds was the difference between myself and that RX-7, and I had to do a lot of overtaking in order to get to that position. So I think in a one-on-one fight, 2 laps, I think I could have gotten that RX-7 one way or another. The BMW M3 E92 finishing just 0.8 of a second behind me, and that's after overtaking the Supra, 370Z, and Exige. So I would have to say the BMW M3 probably the fastest out of these cars. The Exige just 1.3 seconds behind the M3, and then a big gap down to the 370Z in the Supra, which were having a little bit of a battle in the back, and they really just, once we broke away from them, there really wasn't anything that those guys could do. But a really fun car to drive. I would highly encourage it. Unfortunately, you can't change the gear ratio on it, though, so you're kind of stuck with those long gears. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Coming up next is the replay. It's a good one, so I hope you stick around and watch it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.